Tonight we welcome Andrea Ondish, Curator of Education at the Marshall M. Fredericks Sculpture Museum at Saginaw Valley State University. Her presentation will reveal more about the life and legacy of iconic Michigan public sculptor Marshall M. Fredericks, known for works such as The Spirit of Detroit, located in downtown Detroit, and many more, as you will see. Please give a warm RHPL welcome to Andrea Ondish.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for having me come here. Want to start out with a couple questions. Does anybody know Marshall Fredericks? Okay, personally, or if you saw him, or has anyone ever visited his studio? Oh, this is good. So does anybody not know Marshall Fredericks? Okay. Well, I unfortunately never met him. I moved to Michigan about 18 years ago, but I took the job at the museum where I work. Has anyone been to our museum? Yay, good. All right. Well, my presentation, I worked a long time on it. It's going to be kind of about maybe a little over an hour, but I promise you'll have a lot of fun and learn a lot of things. And also, I'm going to, I have a little cheat sheet here. I wanted to read some quotes from him so that you can understand who he was by his words, as well as seeing his artwork, okay? So my presentation is the life and legacy of Marshall Maynard Fredericks. Now, later on at the end of our presentation, I will pull up the website and we could look at some things on the website. There's this great video called The Life and Legacy of Marshall Fredericks, and it just recently published. It's about 17 minutes long, and it really gives a great overview of his whole life. And you can just play that right off our website, and we'll see that later on. I'll show you where you can see it. All right, so in his birth, he's born January 31st, 1908 in Rock Island, Illinois, which is, you can see right on the border of Iowa. It's the Scandinavian community, and his ethnicity is Danish and Norwegian. Now, this is his younger years. This is two photographs of his family. The top one on the left is older, and there was always this little story he tells us, and we tell the kids that come to our museum. Well, how old do you think he was when he made his first sculpture? And they'll 20, 30, whatever. I said, how about 4? And he made it out of a bar of soap, and apparently, as the story says, that he was annoying his mother, and she gave him a bar of soap. His father was an engineer, and the family moved around in the Midwest for employment, and then eventually he secured a permanent position in Cleveland, Ohio, around 1917. And you can see the wonderful pictures. I love looking at these old pictures to see how they dressed and the props behind them. Yep. Which one is Marshall Fredericks? He's the youngest in the family right here. And then also the little boy at the top there in between the father and the sister. Okay. Okay. He went to the Cleveland School of Art, and that was around 1926 and through 1930. And this photo is from that time period. And the reason I have this piece up in the upper right-hand corner, it's a wood carving we have that dates from about 1929, 1930. When I was looking at this photo, I looked right in the back, and here up on the shelf, I see this. It's actually not the same one because the wood is different. But also, you see something else. You see this huge tree trunk. Okay, it's 1929, 1930. What was going on in America? Right? Depression. So it's really easy to go out and get some wood and carve it. Okay? So, but you can see all of the sculptures and things he was working on. And also, if you look at it, it looks like he's in a basement or some kind of a part of the building like that. Okay, travel and study abroad. He received a traveling scholarship, Herman Matson, in sculpture. And look at it, he gave a European fellowship of $1,000. That's a lot of money at that time. And he traveled abroad from 1930 to 31. And one of the things that he did was he had seen like a magazine of Carl Millis's artwork. And he loved it. And he made it a point to go to Sweden to meet him. And he studied about a month with him, stone carving. But he also became really good friends with him. And he also traveled in Germany, France, Italy, and Denmark, Europe, North Africa. And he took classes and workshops and so forth. You know, like a lot of American artists, they want to go overseas, study, and then come back to the United States. When he met Millis, he went to Millis Garden, this is a photo of that. Okay, and then he did a lot of other accomplishments when he was studying, taking classes at different. I'll let you read that. You know, the Kunst Academy in Munich and different people that he took classes from, Hans Swegerli. And he stayed in Munich till about springtime of 31, and then he went to Paris and he studied there, and then traveled to Florence, Italy, Spain, and he probably saw all the beautiful Renaissance art that was there and was so inspired by it. And then he returned back to the United States afterwards, and no work, but he did what he could to make a couple dollars. Worked at a restaurant. He did sell men's clothing door to door, salesman work. He did do a little bit of art and exhibited at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and he also received a few commissions, but, small scale. And then something happens, okay? Carl Millis accepts a position at Cranbrook Academy of Art in Bloomfield Hills, and it was early 1930s. Now, Millis remembered Fredericks, and so he contacts him with a letter and asks if he would come and join him at Cranbrook, okay, because he's still over in Cleveland right now. So he moves to Michigan, and he helps Millis in his studio. And that was about early 1932. And so he really learned the business of being a public artist from working and helping Millis out. He supervised carving, casting, patinating, and installation of sculptures in St. Paul and in Harrisburg. And that's a shot of Cranbrook, aerial view in Bloomfield Hills. Everybody's familiar with Cranbrook, right? Okay. Now, he was a teacher, too, while he was at Cranbrook. Saarinen recommended him to teach at Kingswood and Cranbrook in 1933. He taught sculpture, wood carving, and ceramics. And then he also taught at Cranbrook School. And he did a lot of teaching of all different areas. A lot of people know him for his sculptures, but where do you see some of his beautiful drawings that he did? He also served as head of the Department of Art at Cranbrook School for some time. A lot of people might not know that. Then he was appointed instructor of ceramics and modeling at Cranbrook Academy of Art from 34 to 38. He taught in the sculpture department, and right until he left around 1942. And he was doing all those tasks. Sometimes when you're like that, you do a lot of things. And so it was nice because it gave him a good experience. And again, as well as learning the business of being an artist, and a public artist, too. And he even worked Saturdays. Sometimes I work Saturdays at his museum, too. Okay, this is a great photo because it's a photo of Marshall Fredericks with Carl Millis. And they're in a class, and there are some women that are doing small-scale sculptures. Okay. Now, of course, 1940s, World War II. He was a little older than to be drafted, so what he did was he enlisted, and he joined the Army Corps of Engineers, served as a training officer for an engineer camouflage unit, And he did something interesting. He developed 2 new types of target charts for high-altitude bombers, and this led to his transfer to the Army Air Force. So in other words, they were using him for his art talents during World War II, which was really nice. And I always say this, there's a little article I have. It's a newspaper clipping from Arizona, I believe it is. And it talks about something that he did. He built, according to the article, a 2-block long, I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but it was a 3-dimensional map of Japan. And apparently it was done, I'm thinking, in the Hollywood, California area. I don't know, don't quote me on it. But I'm thinking, what they were doing was helping the bombers know more accurately where to hit their targets. So I'm wondering, I still would love to do some research on that and find out more about that. So he was discharged in 1945. He comes back. There's a couple cool things happening to him at that time I'll talk about in a little bit. So he doesn't get his job back at Cranbrook. So what he does is he purchases some property and sets up a studio because he has a great knowledge of being a public artist now. So if anyone visited the studio on Woodward Avenue, there's your address. The left side is an elevation, and the right side is an interior view, and he's actually in there. I'll point him out. There he is. He's in this studio. But notice the studio, all the stuff that's in there. You have art and plants, things hanging on the wall, things on the floor. It's just loaded with art and fun stuff and tools and equipment and things. Okay. He also had another property, I don't know if a lot of people knew about, which was 772 East Long Lake Road, and it's kind of near the Squirrel Road intersection. And what it was, there was actually a couple buildings on that lot. One was a greenhouse, a Gothic greenhouse, and they did a lot of the processing of the sculptures there and some sculpting. There was another building, and it was we called it the stables building. So it was a horse stables, but it also had like a little house part on it too. And a lot of his art and sculptures and the models were stored there. And there was also another building, and it was on the water. There was a little lake back there. And I'm thinking that it might have been rented out, or people may have lived there at one time. This is the rear of his home at Lake Park Drive in Birmingham. And you'll see a lot of sculptures in his backyard. And then here you see Leaping Gazelle right over here. And then when he passed away at the age of 90 in 1998, they buried him at Greenwood Cemetery. And that Leaping Gazelle you saw in the backyard is the one you're seeing here today. If you're familiar with the cemetery, if you go in the, I'm going to say west side entrance, if I'm right, you go straight on back, you'll see a Leaping Gazelle like that, and that's where his grave is. And there is another one of his sculptures in that cemetery as well, too. I think it's in Birmingham. But I'm going to say, oh gosh, I don't know, that way. I'm not sure. I'm going to say his home was on Lake Park, and it's sort of like there was a lake there, and then that sort of ran into a road that was, I'm thinking kind of near the Historical Museum, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all. I don't know the town very well, but it's there. Now, I'm going to start with his major works. There's 5 of them. We have, of course, Leaping Gazelle, Cleveland War Memorial, Spirit of Detroit, Christ on the Cross, and Expanding Universe. And I'm going to talk about a lot more, too, but I have them in categories. So let's start with Leaping Gazelle, all right? Give you some information on Leaping Gazelle. I'm going to put my glasses on here. All right, we know it's at Belle Isle, right? And there are some other locations. We do have one up on our campus at SVSU, and there's some in different countries, I believe, too. This one here is kind of the piece that he's at Cranbrook, he's the new kid on the block, and so he enters this competition. It was in the 30s, 1930s. It was a national competition, and it was held for the design of a suitable tribute to Mr. Levi Barber, a leading citizen of Detroit. He was also an attorney and a philanthropist, and he led the fight to purchase Belle Isle for a city park. And he willed $20,000 to the city for the purpose of, and this is in quotes, erecting some statue, monument, or other permanent structure on Belle Isle, as I had much to do with procuring the isle for a park. Out of 26 models submitted by local and national sculptors, this Leaping Gazelle was chosen in 1936 as the winner. Now, what was really interesting is the jurors knew a lot of the artists that had submitted the artwork. So what they did was, before they juried the works, they took all the names off of the sculptures of all of the artists, and they put a symbol. And that little circle there with the line, that was Marshall Fredericks' symbol. So, and it was so nice because, you know, he got paid for it. He got his name out there. And as we see later on in my talk, he got some really good commissions too. Okay? So anyways, what else is interesting is also he had, it's a fountain, and it's got a beautiful base. It's still there if you want to go see it today. And it has, it's up high like this. And I know one time when I was driving there, it seemed like you would kind of look at it, down at it. There are 4 little animals around it, and they're hard to see in this image here. But they're animals that are native to Belle Isle. 2 are predatory, 2 are non-predatory. So we have otter, grouse, hawk, and rabbit. If you ever get a chance to get to Belle Isle and see it, it's still as beautiful as ever. The left side you're seeing is a sketch drawing of what he was working on when he was designing it, and you can see it. And it's not real detailed. It's a very gestural kind of a drawing, but you can see how he was working on that. Now, in his own words, Fredericks stated, "I used this gazelle, which to me has always been sort of the perfection of the 4-leggeds. It's just a marvelous expression of the animal kingdom, and the lines of it are so beautiful, it just seemed to set itself up as a natural in that marvelous natural environment, Belle Isle." It was one of 4 purchase prize winners of a nationwide open sculpture competition sponsored by Brookgreen Gardens in Pawleys Island, South Carolina, in 1972. So even in the 70s, it won as a purchase award. You could also see his work there and some other works as well. Okay? And also Brookgreen Gardens American Achievement Award was designed by Fredericks in 1986, which uses the Gazelle theme, and the Brookgreen Gardens Membership Medal in 77 and 78. Brookgreen Gardens, Brookgreen, and it's in Pawleys, and Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Yes, ma'am? Perhaps size. You know, it's the same sculpture. Sometimes he would do sculptures in different scale sizes. But I'm not sure. Was that the same size, Elizabeth? Both large scale, yeah. To me, that one always looks smaller, but we have had them made in smaller scale sizes and seen them, but, okay. And
In terms of public artistry, when you have a commission for this and you sell this, you're not precluded then from doing it.
for another commission. Well, there's a story about that. And according to the copyright laws, and when you do the legal works, when an artist works for somebody, graphic designer, commercial artist, whatever, and they do work for someone and that person then pays them, that person that pays them now has the rights. So, and they lose that, yeah. And I found that out a little later. Some people don't care, some people do. It just depends. And also, too, if you have some kind of a legal document that you set up with the client person that states, whatever, and they agree to it, as long as it's a legal document. But really, the way the government, oops, I didn't know. It's going backwards. Oh, I'm backwards. Wrong way. Okay, so let's move on. Here's a picture of it. It's a little better. I know it's kind of dark, and this is the one up at SVSU, and that's in front of our library building, and has a really high fountains on it. And the Cleveland War Memorial is our next sculpture. Anybody ever see the Cleveland War Memorial? It's in Cleveland by Cleveland Mall A. To the left, you see some of the sketch drawings. He's working his ideas out for the commission. To the right is a presentation drawing. It's more like an architectural kind of a drawing. Now, here's the really cool thing. In the 1940s, of course, he's recently discharged from the war, honorably discharged. He marries. His first two sons are born. He had twin sons. They don't look alike, but they're twins. He's a veteran of World War II now. And he did some really nice stuff, when he was in the war, really good things. Cleveland is his hometown, so he's got all this really, positive things. And then he wins the commission to do this war memorial in Cleveland, Ohio. It actually has a few names. It's called the Fountain of Eternal Life, the War Memorial Fountain, Peace Arising from the Flames of War, or the Cleveland War Memorial. And it actually started, it was commissioned in 1945, but it was dedicated in 1964. Now, just to let you know, he's not working on one sculpture at a time. He works on multiple missions all the time during his working time period in his life. Okay? So he... So this is his presentation. He did a small-scale bronze of this sculpture. And you're probably saying, that's not the Cleveland War Memorial. Well, this is what he proposed to do. He have a man and a woman figure with the globe. And then what happened was he had to work with a committee of people because they had wanted to do a war memorial for Cleveland for many years, since World War I. And so when they finally got it all together, it was right after World War II. So what happened is he gets the commission and he makes this small-scale bronze, and he has to work with a committee of people. You've probably had service jobs in your life, maybe at some point. You always have to please your client. Okay, we didn't tell you this. I'm an artist. I have 4 degrees in art. Okay, but when I do an artwork, nobody tells me what to do. I do what I want. And then if someone likes it, they could buy it. But Marshall's different. He's working for hire. So that's what he does his whole life. So he's always got a client that he has to please. Clients have the right to make changes, and he has to do them. So this large committee, they see this lovely little bronze. We still have it. It looks just like this, only it's very small. He brings it and he shows them. And there's a group called the Gold Star Mothers Club, this organization. Okay? Everybody knows them, right? I don't have to explain that. Okay, good. So they look at it and they say, no nudes and no women. Yes, this is the mid-40s. So he was like, okay. So they worked with him and he worked with them until they finally agreed on kind of what you're seeing here. This is small scale, of course. He's working on, I think this was the clay in his studio. Look around his studio, too, as you're seeing him do that. Yeah, I'm just going to point out some things. This is a smaller scale, like the globe part, and then the 4 sculptures that surround it. Down over here, This is one of the, there's 4 surrounding sculptures that are at the Cleveland. We'll see those different civilizations. A leaping gazelle is over to the right. You know, all this stuff in his studio is really cool. So Marshall Fredericks said, this figure expresses the main theme of the memorial fountain, namely the spirit of mankind rising out of the encircling flames of war, pestilence, and the destructive elements of life, reaching and ascending to a new understanding of life. Man rising above death, reaching upward to his God and toward peace. So that's really what it's all about, in his own words. Now, there's a polished granite rim that surrounds the fountain there, and there are 5,552 Greater Clevelanders who have fallen in military service during times of war from 1899 through to 2014. So their names are all on the base in there. It's really nice. Okay?
What's the four things?
4 sculptures?
Yeah, that he does apparently.
All right, this is,
That consists
you know, he did do that with the Leaping Gazelle, and he did that with the Cleveland. And I'm wondering if it might have been an influence of Millis or another artist or something. You never know. I wish in his words he had written that we would know. But anyways, and it was interesting because the center figure would be like in a bronze, but the 4 surrounding sculptures are carved stone. So unless he was trying to combine the media, you know, I don't know. Okay, so this is dedication. And you can see how large it is, and there it is. In 3 shots, you see it at night, in the day, and then with the surrounding buildings. It's at Civic Center Mall A, Cleveland. Okay. All right, so we have the Spirit of Detroit. Mm-hmm.
Now, it looks like the star dream in Morale Oak, right?
Oh, I'm not there yet. You're jumping ahead of me, but I got a great story. I'm leading up to a good story. You're good students, though, very good students. All right. So I put up 4 sketches and the presentation drawing of the Spirit of Detroit. It's 1958 when he was working on that and when it was dedicated. So you see the first drawing here, this one. You're like, oh, it doesn't look like it at all. But then it starts to look a little bit more like it in that one right here. But in the hands of the Spirit of Detroit, he's not holding what we normally know that he does have. There's something different. There's actually a large freight ship on one hand, and something else in the other hand. It's kind of circular with things hanging from it. So there he is working on a quarter scale, I'm thinking, in his studio. And there it is, Dedication Day. Okay. Now, this is Dedication Day. There's the 2 seals. I think it's one for the county and one for the city on this large wall behind. Then you can see some words right over here. And those words are 2 Corinthians 3:17 on the marble behind it. And it kind of has the words, the Spirit of the Lord, there is liberty. And so it has the words. And then as it was said of his, the artist expresses the concept that God, through the spirit of man, is manifested in the family, the noblest human relationship. Okay.
Teresa, can you dim just a little bit more?
Okay, now this is a photo of him standing. He's a little older, and he's standing in front of the Spirit of Detroit. Notice the patina on it. It's got a lot of drips on it, and it's not looking really that great. This is it today. The city had it all conserved and cleaned, repatinated, and so forth. Just what you need to do. So a lot of people don't realize when you put out public sculpture, it has to be maintained on an annual basis, and it's expensive. Now, the Spirit of Detroit has some symbolic things. It's a man who is representative of the spirit of the people of Detroit. On the one hand here, he has, you see a woman holding a child and a man, signifying a family. On the other hand, you have a circular globe with 26 rays that come out. I wish I knew the symbolism for the 26. And then there are 3 bands that go around it, and in Christianity it refers to the Trinity. And he's sitting cross-legged in what's called the lotus position. And you know, when you put someone in that position, it means that they're a very special person. Then we have Christ on the cross, also called Cross in the Woods. Has anybody ever been to Indian River and seen the Cross in the Woods? Okay, good. It has a similar story. It's been recently cleaned, conserved, and everything. And you're seeing the drawing on the left side. On the right side, you're seeing an image. It's an older image. And you can see the size of the cross. It is bronze. These are 2 shots of him on site installing the Cross in the Woods. You know, it was actually cast in Norway and then shipped to America, then put on a flatbed truck without the arms on. And then when they got it up to Indian River, the arms had to be welded on and then hoisted up onto the cross. And there were huge bolts that they used to attach it. But you can see, just imagine, like, not alone does he have to just do the sculpture and all that, but all of the coordination of who, you know, the installation people and all the things. You just imagine what he'd had to do just to do all of that. And you see a small young guy there with the camera. This is an interview of Marshall Fredericks by Mary I. Oreo of Cranbrook. And he said, "The building was a little simple church building. We went to see the priest because the priest had the idea that he wanted a figure of Christ out in front of the church by the road to identify the church so people would know the church was back in the woods. He wanted a life-size figure just standing there. I said, if you want people coming here from all over the world, they won't come here for that. It needs to be something unique. We ought to build the largest cross in the world." The priest said, "It's impossible to raise the kind of money necessary." You know, it's like the late 50s at that time. "We went to the bishop in Grand Rapids," he said. "Do it right or don't do it at all. I'm sure you'll get the money if you have a good project. I will back it." So as you know, it's like about 28 feet for the actual bronze, but yet it's higher with the cross form. He also said this: "I did not charge any of my time. They just paid for the materials. It was at the time that I decided that Norway was the place to start a foundry. No place in the state would do it. I built a foundry there because at the same time I had the spirit of Detroit to do too. Labor was very cheap there. We could cast it at a fraction of the cost. We cast it at a very reasonable price and shipped it back on a trip right to Detroit and took it up on a truck." So, a lot of people sometimes ask me in the museum, why did they have it cast in Norway? So it was a cost reason. I just see that. Okay, his Christ figure. I have one image. This is the recent image. It's after the conservation. The cross, you'll notice, is like a yellow color, or a light yellow color. And apparently, from what I understand, Marshall had said to them, if you ever conserve it, paint or have the cross a contrasting color, because the sculpture is sort of a brown patinaed. And so that's kind of what it looks like today. Marshall Fredericks noted that the depiction is meant to represent the moment after Christ's soul has been lifted and he's peaceful. Because you notice there's no crown of thorns. He didn't put any wounds in the side. He said he felt bad. He said, I did make one crown of thorns, but I felt bad piercing the skin or something like that, he said. So, anyways, and he wanted to have that peaceful look on the face. And if you look at the face of the Christ, next time you're at Indian River, notice the geometric stylization in the sculpting of it. Okay, now this is where we're going to get back to learning about Star Dream a little bit. We're moving in. It's around the late 50s. He's starting to work on a commission for Washington, D.C., which will eventually be called the Expanding Universe. And it was a commission by the Department of State building in Washington, D.C. And it's the final sculpture we'll see in a little bit is called the Expanding Universe Fountain, or Man and the Expanding Universe Fountain. And it's at the State Court of the Departments, or State Court of the United States Department of State building in Washington, D.C. If you've ever seen the movie Argo, it's in that movie. So, again, they panned it in there. So what he does is he does a drawing, and he says, this is what I propose to do for you in Washington. What do you see there? So you could tell he was not happy that, with the Cleveland, they didn't want the man and the woman thing, so he's going to try again, okay? And the only thing is he makes like these sort of atom-looking circular rings and stuff. Okay, now what are you seeing? There's a change. These are now the drawings that are come more closer to what it actually looked like. Okay, this is in his studio. These people, we don't know who they are. They're unnamed. We're unknown at present. But we're in his studio, and you could see the figure of the Expanding Universe right behind the man there. Marshall is the one on the far left. And this is the sculpture, the final sculpture finished. It has a beautiful basin. It's a fountain. And at the time, it's the early 1960s. We're exploring outer space. So he was doing an artwork based on what was happening in his world. Okay. Let me see if I have good quotes, I think, on this. Let me see. All right. So this was from a manuscript from our archives. The theme was selected to represent the age of great interest, exploration, and discovery in outer space. The complete concept is intended to symbolize the vitality, order, and mystery of the universe. The monumental central figure suggests a superhuman mythological being. He's seated upon a 10-foot sphere encrusted with a multitude of stars of various magnitudes, set in a pattern of the principal constellations of the celestial system. In his hands, he holds 2 planets, which he is sending off into space. His hair, designed with jagged lightning-like forms, is studded with clusters of multi-pointed stars. The dynamic spiral orbit from form, swirling around the sphere, and that's in nickel, by the way, represents the speed and perpetual movement of the heavenly bodies in space. Play of the water from numerous star-shaped sprays in a spiral pattern upon the figure's sphere and orbit is intended to increase the feeling of movement. Okay? All right, now we're at Star Dream. You know the story of Star Dream? Okay, it didn't just start in the 80s when Mayor Barbara Hallman, who was an art teacher, she started to discuss the possibility of an art form or a public artwork for the city of Royal Oak. Okay, so they decided to design a little, it was called a little planting bed, kind of started something, and in anticipation. And then Marshall Fredericks was approached, and they asked him to create a sculpture. So he does a drawing Anyway, but anyways, this is the finished work. And so it's the late 90s. And he has maybe a little bit more flexibility too, and he had his studio in Royal Oak for a number of years. Okay, so he revived the concept of the Cleveland, and they kind of went with it. And he had the bottom part, instead of a circular sphere, it is like a Moravian star. But there's a couple of them. I believe there's 4 stars. And the shape of the stars is based on a mathematical formula, so that each point touches another in a certain way. So there's one large star, and it's balanced on these 4, and they all touch each other in a certain way. The figures soar and reach up and out, and a lot of people say that, I noticed a lot of his works, everybody's reaching upward. And after we get through, you're going to find out a lot of his work is all about positiveness and reaching and coming above and going further and things like that. And I think that's what he always tried to, let everybody know through his artwork. Okay, so anyways, while he's working on this, Barbara Hallman passes away in 1988. So they named the plaza after her. Okay, so that's what it's called. And Marshall Fredericks finished his sculpture, and there it is. And he said, it will be to Royal Oak what the spirit of Detroit is to Detroit. But it will be more exciting because it'll be larger with water and won't be distracted by other things around it. So anyways, another thing you want to understand is, too, it cost $700,000. And no taxpayer money was used. It was all fundraising. And I think there was a grant. But anyways, I had 2 state grants and privately raised funds and so forth. It took about 10 years for it to become reality, and over 300 people attended the dedication, which was September 10, 1997. During the dedication day, Marshall Fredericks says, it means so much to me to be here because I did not expect to be here. It would be nice if the sun came out. I like to see the stars of the base sparkle. So it sounds like it was a cloudy day. Okay, so it symbolizes the spirit of Royal Oak. And as Marshall Fredericks also said, it expresses human aspiration and striving towards greater achievement in all endeavors. And that's kind of what I think a lot of his work says. Okay, we're going to go into different themes now. He did sculptures for 2 World's Fairs, and I don't know if you know, when an artist gets to do a sculpture for a World's Fair, that's a big deal, okay? Some major artists like Paul Manship, St. Gaudens, and a lot of artists like that did World's Fairs artworks. The left side, we have the 1939 World's Fair, and it actually was in the same location as the 64 World's Fair, Flushing Meadows, Cornwall Park, New York. And the left side, you're seeing 2 baboons, and he did a series of, I went the wrong way, baboons. This is a photo, and you see the baboons all sitting around a fountain. There are 5 of them, and there is a small baboon. They are in a cast stone. They're 14 feet high with their pedestals. This is 1939, and they were located at the Glass Industries building. And anyways, the fountain was designed for the garden of that building. And the baby baboon, you see him in the center here. It's a fountain. Okay. And it's a 8-foot diameter glass basin is what it is. And each of those baboons all have a distinct personality. They do different things. And he kind of nicknamed them the Board of Directors Fountain. And he said, the baby baboon is a self-portrait because he appears to be worrying, and Fredericks claims to be a perfectionist. So, okay. Now, the other World's Fair was Freedom of the Human Spirit. You may recognize that one from Shane Park in Birmingham. That was done in for the 64 World's Fair, and you could see in its location here the globe, Paul Manship's globe. And there's the drawing that he did for it. We have a plaster in our museum, and that is still there. And I have another image I'll show you of it. And I have some information to talk about that one. That is 27 feet high. And as I said, it's still there. It was one of 4 major sculptures at the fair. And it originally stood in the Court of States at the entrance of the U.S. Government Pavilion. Now, the Fair Sculpture Committee requested that Marshall Fredericks submit a proposal for a sculpture at the event. So Fredericks submitted several sketches to the Fair's committee, who in turn selected a sketch of 2 figures with swans. Now, originally the human figures had wings, but the review panel requested that Fredericks remove them in the final sculpture. And according to the artist, the sculpture, quote, depicts human figures as if soaring in migratory flights with huge swans, an ancient symbol of eternal life, end quote. Okay? So let's go and see. There it is today. And it looks just as nice. And like I said, you do see another one in Birmingham in Shane Park. It is. Yes, it is. Whimsical. Now, he's known for whimsical because he liked to put a little humor into things sometimes. Okay, you know this little guy here? This is the thinker guy. This is on the Cranbrook, the steps going into the museum. This is a black melon granite. It was done 1938. It is 48 inches with the base. And Mr. George Golbooth, the founder of Cranbrook Educational Community, asked him to make a thinker for the steps of Cranbrook Art Museum, similar to Auguste Rodin's renowned thinker. Okay, so, well, you know, Marshall Fredericks, he loved primates. And I think he had a little humor in him. So he made this little guy right here. And we have a little bronze one like that in front of our museum, too. And Fredericks indicated that when Booth saw the compact composition of the chimp stroking its chin, he commented that it was not like Rodin would do, but Booth was sure the chimp was thinking much more interesting thoughts than most of us are. So anyways, you go to Cranbrook today and you will see it. All right, so we're heading into some other sculpture. Oh, this is a different shot. Isn't that nice? Isn't it cute? You know, one of the things you might notice on some of his sculptures, he does this sort of cut-off knee stylization on a few of his sculptures, and he was a great carver. I look at any of his carvings, and I'm just in awe. Wait till you see some of the buildings he did. Okay, so we have The Boy and the Bear, 1954. There's your drawings on the left-hand side. He was working out the ideas for The Boy and the Bear. It was formerly at Northland, but at the Southfield Public Library, I believe. This is him. It was a limestone, and the little boy, his daughter Roz posed for that, by the way, is a gilt bronze, okay? And he wrote this. It's a little long, so here I'll go. Well, as you know, the first shopping mall was Victor Gruen's Northland. That was the first one in the world, I guess. He and his staff were very art conscious, and they thought that the sculpture would really enhance the architecture, and they were right, because it made architecture more personal and related to people better. People don't like going shopping in just a cement building, you know. They really don't. If it has something that appeals to their eye and is more friendly and warm, and maybe has a little fun connected with it, I think they enjoy it more. That's the reason I did The Bear and the Boy there. That was the first piece ever done for a shopping center. I wanted to reach people who would come there to shop, and the people who come there to shop basically are people, mothers and fathers, especially mothers with their children. And I think over the years it's attracted an awful lot of children, and that attracts mothers, as mothers buy dresses, you know. So it worked. The same with the Lion and the Mouse. All right, so we're going to move on to, this is a shot of it. Back then it was when it was first done. You can tell it's early 60s. We have a bronze on our campus, and he's standing right next to it. Our building is right here. It's the Arbory building. That's where our museum is. The building on the left-hand side is Wicks. It's the administration building. And we have a lovely sculpture garden. I got some pictures we'll see later. All right. You see those two girls? Aren't they cute? That's Marshall's daughters. That's little Suki down there, and there's Roz on the leg of the Lion and the Mouse. And the Lion and the Mouse is, this is a limestone. The little mouse is a gilt bronze, and everybody tells me the story of how it got stolen many times, and he replaced it. 1957, it's about 5 feet high, 9 feet long. And Carl Fredericks told us this little story. He said, the Lion and the Monkey was Marshall's first attempt. And he did cast a maquette. We do have it in the museum. If you look up here in the drawing here, you're seeing a lion. And on the lifted knee, you'll see like a little monkey sitting there. That was the original idea that he was doing. But he said, continuing with Carl said, but a dear Scandinavian lady he knew due to his Scandinavian work and who lived locally reminded him that there was a fable that the kids learned in school about the Lion and the Mouse. So he changed it and won the commission for the Eastland Mall project. She often visited the studio and would tell me this story. Okay? So we have a bronze on our campus, too. And there's Marshall Fredericks posing with it. And you can see it is in limestone. It's beautiful limestone carved. Friendly Frog, 1970. Polished green terrazzo, and the eyes are gold-plated bronze. It's about 5 feet by 8 feet. It's actually a sliding board. And you would climb up the legs, because the people would tell me that had climbed on that when they were little. It was in the shopping mall. I said, how'd you get up there? They said, we just climbed up the legs. And then they would slide down its back, and it goes like this, you know. So anyways, he said, Fredericks had said that when he makes large sculptures of animals that could be frightening to children, he gives them a big smile. So there you are. Okay, and it has a little bit of a story. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Plight of Public Art. Happens a lot. But anyways, the original sculpture was at the Genesee Mall in Flint for 16 years. And then the mall in 1986 donated it to the Children's Museum in Flint. And when they moved into their new building in 1993, the floor of the building was not strong enough to support the 6,600-pound terrazzo frog. So for 11 years, it was stored at C&S Motors on the Dort Highway, which is just a trucking company. The owner put it in the back of a truck, and he covered it with a tarp. Okay? So anyways, someone's going through the trucking company, and they look, and they see the frog, and they were somebody that had climbed on it when they were young. So they go home, and they write a letter to the editor of the Flint Journal, and the title of it was, Lonely Frog. Artist would croak if he could see friendly sculpture now. And then another letter and a couple people. And then the next thing you know, the Ruth Mott Foundation of Applewood Estates, if anybody's ever been there, you got to go. They purchased it and now have it on their property. And 2005 received its permanent lily pad. Okay? So there, it has a new life, and kids are climbing all over it again. All right. Frederick Meyer Gardens. Anybody ever been to Meyer Gardens? Oh, what a cool place. What a great place. Yeah, actually, it was like something about him starting that simply because he had a lot of Marshall's work. So anyways, there's two friendly dragons, and this is the story. I might tell you a little story. As he says, and this is from an interview with Joy Colby, I did a dragon. I called it the Friendly Dragon. The architect said he didn't think he would use it because he said the children would be frightened of a dragon. But children love dragons, and it's not an ugly dragon. It's a friendly dragon with a big smile, and it's cozy, and you can sit on its back on the humps on its back. And he did say, and this is, I wasn't going to say this, he said, it's just that he never was a child. But anyway, he said, I think maybe I'll do that dragon. I like dragons anyway. They're special. So he does the dragon for Fred Meyer. And this might relate to, I think it was somebody over this area here talked about the copyrights. Okay, so anyways, he did the dragon. So he had the plaster model for the dragon and thought he would make another one and sell it. And Fred Meyer heard about it. And he had to sell it at Fred for half price. And so when you go there, you're going to see two of them. So you know the story. So anyways, and it's real. They're really beautiful. We have the plaster in our museum, and it's just really nice, you know. Yes, the very large one. Was it at Da Vinci or one of the art?
It was originally commissioned, Meyer commissioned it, and the place that it went, they said, well, you can't make it in that size. So the one that said Meyer Garden is a little smaller. So it's not
Different scale size. Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay.
so that was a copyright.
Yes, and you know, a lot of people don't realize that. You know, there's a lot of copyright issues, especially today with the internet. I mean, oh my goodness. This one here, this is my most favorite of his work. Horace Rackham Building, the Southside of Detroit. Did you know he did these works? Nobody knows this. Okay, he did, first of all, it was his first architectural commission, okay. You remember he got won the contest for the Leaping Gazelle and everything, and they worked with them to install it. This was a direct result of him getting this commission. This is 1939, okay. He did 46 marble reliefs that tell the story of the building's varied functions of science, engineering, and education. It is absolutely beautiful. It's Art Deco, pure Art Deco in style, gorgeous. Look at those reliefs. Now, this is an example of years ago, when the architects were designing the buildings, the artist was sitting right next to them. Today, it's called the artist and as an afterthought. It's a lot different. So he worked directly with them. His knowledge of working with an architect to embellish a building with art, not only on the side of it, but also a part of it. And not only that, he carved those on site. He's out there carving while they're building the buildings. You know what I mean? So beautiful, beautiful works. And, you know, when you look at the style of the imagery in those, it's just like pure Art Deco. It's just beautiful. So that's one of my most favorite of anything. So then we have another one here. Up, I have the Eaton War Memorial. To the left, you see the drawings. To the right, you see our former director, Marilyn Wheaton. And you see one of the war memorials in our sculpture garden. Okay? So the War Memorial Eagle is 1948. They're about 38 by 42 inches, and they made 7 of them. And they were for the different Eaton manufacturing plants, Cleveland, Massillon, Ohio, Battle Creek, Marshall, Detroit, Saginaw, and Vassar, Michigan. And they're really beautiful. So you see like the eagle form, and then there's like a sort of medallion circle form with writing in it. And it says, in honor of the men of this organization who gave their lives for their country. And then on ours, you can't see it very well, but there are the names of the people who were killed in the war, World War II. One of the names on it, the last one, I think it was from Vietnam, on ours. So there was a wonderful monument, and it was, it honored the employees of the Eaton manufacturing company who died in World War II. And the wall that you're seeing is marble, and the eagle was in bronze. It's an American eagle with outstretched wings. The talons grasp an olive branch and arrows, signifying capacity for both peace and war. The inscription is encircled with a laurel branch on the left and an oak branch on the right. These signify victory and strength. Okay. And this is what it looks like. You can see the names a little better on it. Okay, this is the spirit of Kentucky. Okay. Again, he's working with architects, and this is 1948. There's a black granite surface, and his sculptural reliefs are on that surface. It's about a 16-foot area, and they're cast in bronze, these pieces. And that's the entrance to the Louisville Courier-Journal building. The meaning is, it embodies the spirit and the history of the state of Kentucky in a visual form. So you're seeing a pioneer family with animals in the forest, river boats, and giant catfish, tobacco, and sheep, and thoroughbred horses. So all symbols and things of Kentucky. Okay, Victory Eagle. You know the big eagle right by Cobo Hall? There it is on the floor. Yeah. Okay, so this is Victory Eagle, 1950. It was carved at the Vermont Marble Company in Proctor, Vermont, and then installed on the Veterans Memorial in Detroit, which is now the UW Ford National Program Center, if I'm correct. It was comprised of 10 blocks of Vermont marble weighing 210 tons. One of the blocks was the largest ever quarried at 86 tons. It's 30 feet square and in relief, which means from the bottom going upward about 4.5 feet. And this is a quote from Mary I. Oreo of Cranbrook interviewing Marshall Fredericks. It was a war memorial, and there were windows all the way across the whole building on all four sides. And there was a little space for the relief. I saw it, and I didn't say anything. But I made a scale model out of wood and took all the windows off the front and put the eagle on there. The architect came out to see it and was really pleased. He changed all the drawings. Otherwise, I don't think I would have gotten that job. So now you know the story. Okay. So right next to the eagle, there it is on the building. And just to the left, you'll see one of the pylons here. And here are the pylons. It's right near Cobo Hall area. And the pylons have these lovely relief. And it's actually what they're called are sunken reliefs because they don't project out. Everything is within the surface. If you look at the surface like this, it's flat. But then you see the imagery carved in it. And there are, the different themes are of each of the pylons, the founding of Detroit, the Civil War, Admiral Perry and the Battle of Lake Erie during the War of 1812, Chief Pontiac signing the peace treaty, ending the Indian War, Theodore Roosevelt and Commodore Dewey in the Spanish-American War scenes, the symbolic female figure with the World War II slogan, to make the world safe for democracy, and the seventh pylon refers to the end of World War II with incised hand, branch stars, and patriotic inscriptions. Okay? The pylons and the eagle were both conceived as a whole and not separate things. The American eagle, as you enter the University of Michigan Stadium. You see the American Eagle. We have a smaller scale one in our museum in bronze. They're drawing on the left and the one on the right. That is 1950s when it was done. It's at the what they call the Big House, in honor of the men and women of the University of Michigan who gave their lives to their country. And then bronze, it is about 12 feet. In designing the stadium memorial, I tried primarily to convey two thoughts. First, the monumental American Eagle in its attitude of alertness and strength, grasping the laurel wreath in its talons, symbolizes the eternal, unceasing protection of the honored memory of those who gave their lives for our country. Secondly, through the powerful, dynamic forms and outline, I attempted to represent the strength, courage, and vitality of the young men and women to whom it's dedicated. Okay. Do you remember this place? All right. Okay. This is 16 fiberglass reliefs. They're about 8 feet at the Ford Rotunda that was in Dearborn. Just to let you know, the Rotunda building house, it was originally made to house the Ford Motor Company's exhibit at the 1932-33 Chicago World's Fair. And then they re-erected it in Dearborn. During World War II, it was closed, and then it was reopened again in 1953, and then it was destroyed by fire in 1962. Now, here's the cool thing about it. Okay? The architect for this building was Mr. Albert Kahn. Here's the second one. The dome was by Buckminster Fuller. Amazing. And Marshall Fredericks got to do 16 reliefs. Now, they wanted those reliefs to be lightweight. So it's 1953. There's this new stuff called fiberglass. So they were all done in cast fiberglass. And that's what you're seeing. These 16 reliefs won the gold medal in sculpture from the Architectural League of New York in 1956. And the themes of the reliefs were represented of the materials and skills that go into the making of an automobile. Okay. Ohio. The Ohio Union Building reliefs. There again, beautiful carvings. Okay. This is 1955, Columbus, Ohio. They're about 8 foot, I'm saying here. He worked on them from 1950 to 55, carved them on site. The architects were Bellman, Gillette, and Richards. These reliefs also won an honorable mention in sculpture from the Architectural League of New York in 1955. And the 6 reliefs were the steel industry, river freighters, education and government, Johnny Appleseed, pioneers and early settlers, ceramics, agriculture, and aeronautical pioneering, and Indians of the Ohio River Valley. Then, same reliefs, new building, new Ohio building. And you notice there's little wood frames around them. I guess they was a new building, 2010. And they were conserving the reliefs. So that's how they look today, except without the wood structures on them. Okay. There he is working in his. Okay. This one is, you got it right, Ford Auditorium. So he's working on a different thing. Okay. We're used to see him carving stone or doing cast work. This one's different. All right. What this is about is there's actually going to be 3 sculptures. There's a large Ford Empire piece. He's standing on a large board. It's a different building. He rented a different building to work on it because of the size of this work. This is 145 feet long, one solid piece. And it is made of repoussé and formed metal. And some of the formed metals are copper, nickel, brass, stainless steel, and aluminum. So he's using different metals. You know, different metals are different colors. And then also plated with gold, zinc, and cadmium. And then also there's the Harlequins and the Circus Parade and the Harlequins and Ballerina Orchestral Parade. Okay. Let me just quickly say something here. Just want to look really close in here. He's standing here. You see, there's this huge drawing underneath, and he's putting these pieces. There's thousands of welds of all these pieces of metal. It's done with the sort of perspective. When you look at it, you see this, like perspective-looking imagery. But if you see the drawings underneath of the marks, and he's laying them down on the paper and welding them. There's the welder right there. Just imagine the work that had to do. And beautifully done. He's a master perfectionist, okay? So very, very interesting. Here's center. You can't see the far right and far left, but this is the Ford Empire black and white shot. But look at how beautiful the light shines on all the linear pieces. And we do have a color. So it's an older photo. It's a little grainy. It was from a dot printed piece. You can see the Ford Empire. Now, to the right was the Harlequins and Ballerina Orchestral Parade. And to the left, you see the Harlequins and Circus Parade. Okay, so let's see. Marshall said, well, that was a very important piece of work in my life. It was, I think, the largest and most ambitious, I got to agree with him there, fabricated metal sculpture ever made at that time and possibly still is. At least it was written up in many internationally as being that. And I know Mr. Edgar Richardson liked it a great deal, and it seemed architecturally right. The architects felt it worked out just right. It was started when the building was just drawings. I made a little model of the piece and designed it in a scale model exactly as it would be in big size. Physically, it was an extremely difficult thing to design and make. It took almost 3 years, and it's huge. And while it looks from a distance as though they are wires, actually some of the sections are 2 inches in diameter. It tells the story, of course, of the Ford Empire. On one end of the big group represents the forces and products of nature. On the other end, the skills and talents of man and all the different professions and so on. And these two come together and form the Ford Empire in the center, which is represented with all the actual buildings and products of Ford. So it told the story of the building in the center, and then on the ends, it told another aspect of the building, which is entertainment and theater, the Harlequins and circus trains. And it seemed to fit in, and the color was right. It's clear metal and not too flashy. It was sort of subdued. It seemed right. I wanted it to be like a gigantic piece of jewelry. Okay, all right. In storage. Ford Historical Society has it in storage. It's, I don't know if I could say could I say that? It's at Historic Fort Wayne. They have a huge storage unit there. I saw it once. Yeah, I went there one time when we were delivering some things back from a show, and I actually saw it, and it's like this huge table, and it's sitting on it. It's amazing. So, we hope. Anybody have any ideas? We certainly hope. Wouldn't that? Oh, hey, here you go. Oh, perfect, because you know the wall is curved, and the sculpture does have that curve. So, hey, we're open to any ideas. The little clowns were relocated to our campus at SVSU. They are in our what we call our Curtis Hall building. And it was interesting because our director, Marilyn at the time, she wanted to have them conserved because people were getting in and stealing a lot of the smaller parts like here. So what we do is we had them conserved, and Venus Bronze helped us to replace the parts, put it all together, clean it, get it all ready. And then the architect of our Curtis building was so excited that he said, I'm going to design panels for them. And we have our theaters. We have like 2 theaters, and they're right above on a walkway. It's really, really nice. So, yes, they are. Well, from the from the Ford Auditorium, the ones on either side of the Ford Empire. So they are right now at our university. On loan. Mm-hmm. They're enjoying the sights and all the kids and everything. Okay, fountains. I'm going to move a little quicker because I know we're short of time. Kresge Library. You guys all know this one, right? Okay. So we also have them at the Midland Center for the Arts in Dow Gardens. Has a set this size. They were actually done in a small set size like this, about 3.5 foot high, and then enlarged. And they were originally done in '39 when he was at Cranbrook. Now think about the Orpheus Fountain that Millis did at Cranbrook and the figures, and then you see how much Marshall Fredericks was very influenced by Millis's work. You see some of the drawings, sketches on the left too as well. Mcloren Auditorium, okay, and this is really neat. This is the Night and Day Fountain, which is dated 1962, the bottom area, and then the sculptured clock, 1960. The building architect is Alden Dow. And he was really good friends with Alden. You know, one of the things Marshall did is he made himself very well known to architects because that's how he got jobs. Okay, so architect Alden Dow also worked with him on Cross in the Woods. He did the building at Indian River, and Carl Fredericks, he would say, every so often Dad would put us all in the car and we'd go up to Midland, and we'd eat at Alden's house and visit with him and stuff. So they stayed good friends. Yes, at the Dow Gardens, they do have a leaping gazelle there. In the house, there's the Seven Saints and Sinners and the Anniversary Baboons, and there's childhood friends on the outside of the building. Okay. All right, this is a close-up of the clock. It's gold anodized. Look at the work on that Marshall did. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You know, I've always seen the photo, and you see the clock in the background, but we were lucky. I looked really hard, and just like 2 days ago, I found this photo. And isn't that gorgeous? I think Laurie and I had gone up. Laurie works with us at the museum, and we went to Port Huron and did a program at the little college there, and we went and saw that, and we got some good pictures that day. But that's really nice, very beautiful. Okay, and let me see if he has anything he says about that. Oh, Fredericks chose the theme of time because the man who was the CEO of the building at that time or something like that, he was the kind of a punctual person on time. So the time is the theme of that. And as we know, Alden Dow was the architect and worked with him. Okay, so God of the Rainbow, and it's actually not a Marshall Fredericks sculpture, but yet Marshall sculpted it. It was originally designed by Carl Millis. So Millis Garden contacts Marshall and says, would you take the sketch model of Millis and make it into a sculpture? And he did. And he was 87 at the time, 87 years old. He goes, I'm old. He said. So anyways, this is one of the later sculptures he did. You have an angel at the bottom over here. He's throwing stars up to the angel at the top, and then there's this sort of fountain part that comes out with the water. It is 69 feet high, and it's in Nackastrand, Sweden. And so it's really, really nice. Well, these are the later projects. Okay, Lord Byron, poet Lord Byron on the right here. He'd been working on that for years, from Cranbrook time, in small scale size, and then he decided to enlarge it. He loved the poet Lord Byron, the writer, and so you can tell it's really stylized, it was actually, like I said, designed in 1938, and he did do a small cast too. And it's possible that there was a little influence of Rodin's Balzac sculptures, a little bit. It's dramatic, a little bit romanticism, maybe at the time. And this is kind of what it looks like on our campus today. And it's interesting. It's actually a movie star, too. We have the clay version to Lord Byron. We have the plaster model version, and we had a film made on the metal casting process, sand casting method, which is on our website. You can play it from that. And then our bronze is on campus, and that's how we use it as a teaching tool to explain the casting process. And then we have Black Elk. Black elk, this is a little long story with black elk. This one is 12 feet 4 inches. It's on our campus. And it started with in Blair, Nebraska. They wanted to create the Tower of the Four Winds there. And they thought, well, let's raise money, and if someone donates money, we'll give them a small commemorative of black elk, and we'll have an artist do it. So they hired this artist by the name of Ace Powell, and he started working on it. But what happens is Ace died before it was finished. One of the people that was on the committee working was this man. His name was Bill Thompson. And Bill went to school at Marshall at Cleveland. So he contacted him and said, would you consider taking this up? And he created a whole different design and worked very close with him and a person by the name of Father Manhart, who knew Native American symbolism. And so, anyways, he created Black Elk. And there were some sculptures he had done. We have small ones that are similar and relate to it in style at our museum. But anyways, he worked very closely with them on this. And it was, I think I have some quote here. He said, the inspiration for this sculpture is from Peace, from Black Elk Speaks by John Neihardt. And he stated that Black Elk was a holy man praying to the gods. The peace pipe is held at a special angle because he's offering it to the heavens. He's giving a prayer of thanks to the great gods for the buffalo. The buffalo was a way of life for Native Americans who provided weapons, food, and clothing. Okay? And then this shows him in the greenhouse, and this is the oil-based clay or plastilina of the black elk. And you can see he's quite old in this photo. Very close to death. Okay, our museum, if you have not been there, it is a really cool museum. We have a main gallery, which is about 200 works, including plaster models, bronzes, a couple bronzes. The building was designed by Ralph Calder and Associates of Detroit. And there's a lot of, I'm going to say, influence from Cranbrook's Art Museum, especially with the coffered ceilings and the travertine. We have travertine on the floor and the walls. Oh, it's just absolutely nice. Very light value and color as you walk through. We have now the Sculptor Studio, so we have a lot of the tools, equipment, things that Marshall, came from his studio to help explain the casting process. It's a really neat room to see. We have a lot of temporary exhibitions, about 3 a year, usually of regional, national, international artists, and a lot of humanities. Right now we have John F. Kennedy's Life and Times in Photographs. And it's curated by Lawrence Schiller, who was an AP photographer, very interesting guy to meet. Wonderful show. We have our archives. We have 200 linear feet of archives, project files, photographs, correspondence, clippings, articles, films, more fun stuff. And we also have the lovely Joanne and Donald Peterson Sculpture Garden, and this was the architectural rendering that Marilyn worked with the architects to redesign and reconfigure our sculpture garden. So there's this kind of a shot of it now in reality. And if you want to see more clusters of his works, this is the Brookgreen Gardens place. You see all the sculptures he has there. And that's Anna Hyatt Huntington was one of the founders of the Brookgreen Gardens. She was a wonderful sculptor. And then we also have Frederick Meyer Gardens. You see all the sculptures he has there. Achievements. This guy was just loaded with achievements. Look at Fine Arts Medal from the AIA, 52, honorary life membership in the Michigan Society of Architects, being the first sculptor to be honored by them. Recipient of this Distinguished Service Award of the Michigan Association of the Professions, Michigan Academy Award for the Michigan Academy of Science, Arts, and Letters. So, and there's a lot more. So why did he make his artwork? There it is. I love people I have learned through many experiences, both happy and sad, how beautiful and wonderful they can be. Therefore, I want more than anything in the world to do sculpture which will have real meaning for other people, many people, and might in some way encourage, inspire, or give them happiness. Uplifting and positive. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Questions? Let me make you aware of a book we have. This book, you're welcome to look through it. The back part of it has a listing. It's not complete or anything like that. And I do have these books, by the way, if anybody's interested in getting one. And you're welcome to pass that around. That's like a little copy that we look at. It's heavy, but that would tell you, because there are a lot of sculptures in many locations, and I know some of them. Nordic Swan. Yeah. Okay. Question. They were destroyed. Yeah. Because the building was destroyed by fire, so they were destroyed. Okay, one of his students at Cranbrook was Honey Arbery, or Dorothy Arbery, and she was a niece to the Dow family. And they had always been friends, you know, and of course, you knew Alden Dow. And he approached a few places in the Detroit area to put up, to have a museum, but he wanted it at a college or university. And nobody took him up on the offer. And so Honey said, hey, I'm on the founding board of this little college here in Saginaw. So she approached them. And they said, sure, because they wanted to do an arts building, and that's the reason why. And then she helped raise $7.5 million to build it. And it is called the Arbery Fine Arts Center. Okay. MarshallFredericks.org. It's $65 plus tax. I think it was $68.90 with the tax. Okay. Any other questions? How many are coming to visit us? Oh, I want all your hands up. Thank you, everybody. And if you have any other questions, just let us know.